This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Follow the Lead Podcast, a Christian Leaders Podcast powered by Greg Fay Insurance. If you haven't talked to my man Greg Fay, do so today. Go to gregfayinsurance.com. Today on the podcast, it's just me and you and me. I love to do these kind of one-off episodes where you and I get to spend a little time wrestling with something that maybe we heard in the podcast or questions that have been given to me. And today I wanted to talk about contentment versus complacency. Contentment versus complacency. This question came in from my friend Zach. He was listening to the Linda McKissick episode, and she said something that he really wrestled with. And it's the distinction between being content and being complacent, and kind of the biblical lean in on both, right? Both of them, he would suggest, carries this level of satisfaction with your current circumstances, but yet they seem to contrast each other in a very dramatic way. So today, I thought that was a great thing to wrestle with, and I'm super appreciative of Zach's feedback. And I thought it would be fun to wrestle with this idea about complacency and contentment. Also, full disclosure, before prepping for this, I really hadn't done much research on the two. But I started with kind of the working definitions. Contentment is a state of happiness and satisfaction. Complacency is a feeling of smug or uncritical satisfaction with oneself or one's achievements. Let me give those definitions again because I think they're important. Contentment is a state of happiness and satisfaction. Complacency is a feeling of smug or uncritical satisfaction with oneself or one's achievements. And so when we look at the definition of both of these things, what's the real difference? And what I would suggest is that the real difference, the most simplest way to say it, is the difference is the position of your heart. The position of your heart. Let's take a look at 1 Timothy 6 as we kind of flush out this idea about contentment. This is 1 Timothy 6, 6 through 10. It reads like this. But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these things we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. So that's a great look at the idea of contentment, right? And 1 Timothy 6, 6, this, but godliness with contentment is great gain. Love that. So then we go to this idea about complacency, right? Complacency is very different. Complacency is this idea. Ephesians says it well. Ephesians 4:19, it says, they have become callous and given themselves up to sensuality, greed, to practice every kind of impurity. So I like these both writings from Paul as it contains to contentment and complacency because Paul can give us a really good look at both. Contentment is this idea that I'm okay where I'm at. I'm happy. I'm thankful. I have this posture of gratitude. And yet, at the same time, I know that God's going to continue to move me. Complacency, if we look at the definition and then we look at Ephesians, it's more along the lines of this callousness, right? The definition uses the word smug or uncritical satisfaction. Complacency is saying, I'm here and I deserve to be here, right? I don't need to move. I don't have to worry about what's next because, I am who I am. I am him, as my kids would say, right? I'm the GOAT. That's complacency. Now, the difference is contentment is I'm the GOAT and I know I'm going to have to work to stay there, right? I am him and I'm going to have to work to stay there. Confidence can be in both. Hear me on that. Confidence, you can be really content and be really confident. You can also be complacent and really confident. The position of your heart is the difference. Are you leaning in? Are you just relaxing on your laurels? Are you sitting back on your heels? I think in complacency, there's a lack of examination on where we're going. In contentment, I would say that there's a constant examination of our position.
This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV. It's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
So let's get practical with this. I'm really content with what God has done in my business. My coaching business is, it's going really well. God has been very generous, and I'm so thankful for all the people who have trusted me to walk alongside them. That is contentment. In addition to that, I also do quarterly planning. I do annual planning. I'm looking at where I'm at. I'm examining the situation. I'm leaning into the foxhole, as we said in the Army, right? I'm leaning into the foxhole so that I can constantly evaluate with a critical eye. Complacency would be, I'm really good here and I don't need to do anything about it, right? Uncritical satisfaction. I'm not looking at it. I'm not thinking about it. I'm just happy with where I am. I'm kind of smug about it. Ha, I did that. Or, I'm here. Do you hear the difference? I think as Christians, as Christian leaders specifically, we're called to a posture of contentment. Lord, I'm so thankful for where I am today. I'm so satisfied. I'm so happy. I have joy, right? Because we know joy is a fruit of the Spirit. Also, as a Christian, we have to be willing to move. I see that at the end of every episode. We have to be willing to lean in. We have to be willing to go where we're called. Like, I'm really happy with where I'm at. And if God wants to move me, I'm going to be really happy where that is too. It's a state of happiness or satisfaction. As a matter of fact, I would say that one of the ways that we know if we're getting complacent, if we are not moving, if we haven't been scared recently. If you're in a position where you haven't been challenged or scared, you may not be moving. And as a result, you probably have become complacent. Contentment includes fear. Like I'm happy and I'm satisfied and I know that God is going to move me. I think Christian contentment includes fear. Fear's just on the other side of it because God's going to call me to something new. God always calls us to something new. He's never going to leave us where we are. He's always going to move us. He's always going to have us lean in because following Jesus is a verb. Following Jesus requires movement. It requires us doing things. It requires us leaning into the foxhole and saying, Lord, what do you have for me? I'm going to pray different. I'm going to read something different. I'm going to act different because that's what God's called us to. So another way to think about the difference between contentment and complacency is a static versus movement, right? Contentment is happiness and satisfaction with the expectation that we're not going to stay there, right? I'm prepared for movement. Complacency is I'm here and I'm happy and I'm probably never going to leave. A word that often gets used in the Bible is the word sluggard, right? And it's akin to lazy. And I think sometimes complacency leads to laziness. And hopefully, contentment leads to movement, openness to where God is calling you to. The understanding that I'm happy and I'm satisfied right here. And if God wants me to give it all up, I will absolutely do it because I'm satisfied. I'm content. I understand. I don't know that I think we can be content if we haven't surrendered outcomes, right? There's a very real connection between surrendering outcomes and contentment as it pertains to our faith, leaning in, being intentional. So I think each and every one of us have to wrestle with that question. Are you content or are you complacent? Are you content or are you complacent? Contentment should look like satisfaction with the expectation of movement. I know things are going to change. I'm ready for when they change. The Lord is calling me to something new at some point. Complacency is, I'm fine. I don't have to do anything different. I'm just going to be here. Are you content or are you complacent? What's the position of your heart? I would challenge you to make this part of your spiritual rhythm. And if you're wrestling with these questions and you don't feel like you can come to the answers on your own, this is exactly the kind of work I do in my coaching business. I help high-octane leaders wrestle with contentment versus complacency. Have them look at their values, look at the position of their heart, help them position themselves in such a way so that when the Lord calls, they're ready to move. Are you ready to move? Question we all should wrestle with. Well, friends, that's our podcast for today. As always, I'm so thankful for you that you'll drop in on these little deeper dive episodes where it's just me and you. I always appreciate the opportunity to connect. If you need anything from me, you know I'm embarrassingly easy to find at TWMilt on Instagram or follow the number 2leadcoaching.com, my website. This episode would not be possible without our incredible partners. You've heard me talk about them time and time again. 5-Star Home Services with their profit on purpose mentality. They do HVAC, plumbing, and electrical repair for your home. Get you ready for the fall and eventually, dare I say it, the winter. Winter's coming, right? Of course, call them if you need anything. Now is the time to schedule your fall HVAC tune-up. Speaking of homes, you also know how much I appreciate and value Trent Barga. Trent is a dear friend of mine, and the Barga team wants to help you get into your next home. Interest rates are changing. The market is shifting. Trent can help you navigate all of that. If you haven't done so yet, subscribe to his YouTube channel. He puts a lot of great real estate information out there. Contact either 5-Star or Trent. Tell him Tony sent you. That always goes a long way to help remind them of how thankful we all are for that partnership. Well, guys, good luck with wrestling with the difference between contentment and complacency. And remember, if you want to follow Jesus, you must be willing to move.